debate continues over how to divide up water from the Colorado River. I wanted to dive deeper and take a closer look at the Hoover Dam and just how crucial it is to our state, our region, and the entire nation.
On March 3rd, 2026, something changed at Hoover Dam. There was no explosion, no sirens, no emergency broadcast, just a measurement. A routine maintenance crew working along the downstream face of the dam looked up at the canyon wall and saw something that shouldn't have been possible, a white mineral scar, stretching 140 feet above the waterline. If you've ever visited Lake Mead, you've seen it. The bathtub ring, a chalk-white band of calcium carbonate coating the canyon walls where water once stood. But 140 feet? That's not a drought. That's a verdict. And it tells a story that decades of reassuring government language could never fully hide. Because Lake Mead, the largest reservoir in the United States, is not just low. It's approaching structural collapse, the measurement that shocked engineers. By noon that same day, officials confirmed the reservoir's elevation had dropped to one of the lowest sustained readings in its recorded history. That white scar is more than cosmetic. It's a permanent geological receipt. Every foot represents water that entered the lake, rose to that height, and never came back. To understand the scale, at full capacity, Lake Mead holds about 26 million acre-feet of water. Today, it's hovering around a fraction of that. Let that sink in. A reservoir built to ensure the American Southwest against drought, now operating on emergency margins. This isn't just about a lake. This is about a system built for a climate that no longer exists. Where the water was supposed to come from, Lake Mead depends almost entirely on one thing: the Colorado River, and that river depends almost entirely on snow, specifically snowpack that accumulates across the Rocky Mountains in winter in Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, and New Mexico, and melts slowly through spring, feeding the river system downstream. But that snowpack is collapsing. Over the past several decades, average snowpack levels in the upper Colorado River basin have declined dramatically. But here's what's worse. It's not just less snow, it's melting earlier. Warmer winters mean snow turns to runoff weeks ahead of schedule, before reservoirs are positioned to capture it efficiently. Instead of slow, sustained melt feeding Lake Mead through summer, we get flash runoff, evaporation, loss. The water is arriving too early and disappearing too fast. A 1922 miscalculation. To understand how we got here, you have to go back to 1922. Representatives from 7 western states gathered to divide the Colorado River under what became known as the Colorado River Compact. They allocated the river based on flow measurements taken during one of the wettest periods in centuries. They believed the river produced around 16 million acre-feet per year. Modern measurements show long-term averages closer to 12 million, sometimes even less. That difference? 4 million acre-feet every year, overallocated for over a century. The system wasn't built on stable math. It was built on unusually wet weather, and no one corrected the error when they had the chance. The dam that powers the desert. Most people think Hoover Dam's primary job is storing water. It's not. Its most critical function is generating electricity. The dam's hydroelectric turbines power roughly 1.3 million homes across Nevada, Arizona, and California. Hospitals, water treatment plants, entire cities. But hydroelectric generation requires pressure, and pressure requires elevation. As Lake Mead drops, water pressure driving those turbines weakens. Power generation declines, not gradually, but increasingly faster as the lake falls. There's a threshold called minimum power pool. Below it, the turbines stop. Below that lies something even more alarming: dead pool. Dead pool means water levels fall so low the dam can no longer release water downstream at all. No hydroelectric power, no controlled river flow, no reliable delivery to 7 states. We are not there yet, but we are closer than we have ever been. And that white 140-foot scar is proof the buffer is shrinking. 40 million lives. 40 million people depend on Colorado River water. Let's make that real. Las Vegas draws roughly 90% of its water directly from Lake Mead. Billions have been spent drilling deeper intake tunnels as the lake receded. Phoenix continues expanding, adding residents each year while emergency water models quietly update behind closed doors. Los Angeles supplements supplies with Colorado River allocations that now face uncertainty. Farmers in California's Imperial Valley grow the majority of America's winter vegetables using this water, and tribal nations, including the Navajo Nation, face water insecurity levels that expose the moral moral dimension of this crisis. This isn't abstract. This is food supply, energy security, housing development, economic stability, all tied to a shrinking lake. The domino effect Lake Mead does not fail alone. Upstream sits Lake Powell, held back by Glen Canyon Dam. These two reservoirs were designed as a dual buffer system. Together, they once stored nearly 50 million acre-feet of water. Today, a fraction of that. When Powell drops, less water flows to Mead. When Mead drops, the margin for recovery disappears. It's a feedback loop, and it's accelerating. Meanwhile, Mexico holds treaty rights to Colorado River water under agreements signed decades ago. If supply can't meet domestic allocations and international obligations simultaneously, the crisis shifts from environmental to diplomatic. The snowpack warning. Recent snowpack projections offer little comfort. In late winter measurements, critical headwater regions reported well below average accumulation. If spring runoff underperforms again, Lake Mead could end the year lower than it began. 3 of 4 operational models for the basin now project continued decline over the next several years. The optimistic scenario? It requires multiple consecutive above-average snowpack years starting immediately. That hasn't happened in decades. This is no longer about a bad year. It's about arithmetic, the hard truth. There was no earthquake, no hurricane, no singular catastrophic moment. What we're witnessing is slower, quieter, more relentless. A century of decisions based on the assumption that the future would look like the past. Cities were built, water rights issued, development approved, again and again and again, while the snowpack declined, while temperatures climbed, while the lake dropped 1 foot at a time. The Colorado River no longer consistently reaches the Gulf of California. It simply runs out, consumed by agriculture, by municipal pipes, by evaporation, long before it reaches the sea. And the white scar at Hoover Dam? It doesn't argue, it doesn't exaggerate, it just records. This is what you used. This is what did not return. What happens next? The lake is still there, the dam still stands, the turbines still spin, for now, but the margin between stability and crisis narrows with every below-average winter, with every rising temperature, with every new foot of exposed canyon wall. 140 feet, 14 stories of empty air, a vertical monument to miscalculation, and a warning to anyone willing to look. But here's the question no one in power seems willing to answer clearly. What happens when the line keeps rising? What happens when the white scar climbs another 10 feet, 20 feet, 50 feet? At what point does temporary drought become permanent reality? The American Southwest was engineered on confidence. Confidence in snowpack, in river flow, in predictable seasons. But confidence is not a water source. And if the next few winters fail to deliver, the conversation will shift from conservation to survival. This isn't about panic. It's about preparation. Because history will remember who saw the warning and who ignored it. The American Southwest was engineered on confidence. Confidence in snowpack. Confidence in predictable runoff. Confidence that the river would always replenish what we took. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. Because the story of Lake Mead is far from over.